mining industry, but we are actually also in the automotive industry, because we are all major automotive suppliers, right? So what's going to happen in the car industry is of very big importance, and our metal are used in the drivetrain or in the propulsion technology. So we're going to talk about that. So Bernard made the name of the session very clear: internal combustion engine, battery electric vehicle, fuel cell electric vehicle. Who will be the winner? So very, very clear. So let me start with you, Tim, and. Just when we all read, we hear about governments who are announcing bans of ICEs in different time frames, different jurisdictions, different cities, different provinces, different states, different countries. OEMs are also announcing left and right that by X, 2030, 35, 40, whatever it is, they will reduce or even eliminate the investment in ICEs. So my question to you, Tim, is are the internal combustion engines dead? Is that it? What is your take on this?
I think the very, very easy short answer is no. Internal combustion engines are definitely not dead, by all means. I think we should recognize that you're right, Benny. If you look at countries and OEMs with significant announcements, I think you really have to look region by region. For example, China has been out there and has announced that in 2035, 50% of all of their car production, light-duty car production, should be electrified. If you look at Europe, similar announcements specifically on zero emissions by 2035 as well. If you look at Canada, putting ban on emissions in 2035, as well as what California says. And many OEMs, as you referenced, are certainly, whether it's Stellantis, whether it's Ford, GM, you name it, Toyota, Honda, etc., all have kind of different mandates out there for their overall production, ranging from 30 to 60% in any given country over the course of the next decade. So from my perspective, I think it's really about the penetration rate for BEVs. And, at BASF, we're, of course, looking at the catalyzed vehicle production in general. And if you look from our perspective, I would say the peak of catalyzed vehicles, so internal combustion engines plus plug-in hybrids, we don't see this until 2024, 2025 timeframe, peaking at 85 million vehicles produced per year. I think on top of that, and I heard it and it's probably been discussed in prior panels, is around regulations. I think last panel was already mentioning, Euro 7 coming in 2027. You look at NS7 in China coming in 2027. So the regulation there as well. So if we look at catalyst production, if we look at peaks for catalyst production, we don't see this from a BASF perspective until 2026, 2027 timeframe. So over the course of this decade, I don't envision and don't foresee that there's going to be a significant drop in overall catalyst production. And of course, this drives precious metals and the precious metals market. And again, I think that the big topic is really, penetration of BEVs. And maybe just a remark there too as well. If you look at different announcements, different perspectives, whether that's 30%, 40% BEV penetration, that's 40 million vehicles per year. I look at it like also the challenges that the industry will face to even execute that at the end of the day. And I think this is something that we all need to pay attention to. Challenges like, are there enough nickel class 1 raw materials available in the industry to even support that ramp up? Is there enough lithium battery grade to support that? And if you start looking at ramp up curves and raw material supplies, and you look at the deficits that could occur, I think this is a significant watch out in general for these penetration rates as well. If you look at just capital costs, to invest in cathode active material production, which BASF is active in, or to invest in cell production, this is billions of dollars, takes years and years to do. So the infrastructure or the capital intensity required, again, to support these penetration rates are significant. Infrastructure is another topic, and I'm sure we'll cover that as well. So I think this is really the big, the big watch out. So to round out my answer, Benny, at the end of the day, I don't think that ICEs are absolutely dead, and I think that the thing that the industry needs to pay attention to is really this penetration rate of BEVs, and I am skeptical that it will come as quickly as what's out there.
We are a bunch of pretty cool guys here, but Elon Musk, he's like uber cool, right? He's like a rock star. We are not exactly there yet. We're on our way, I would say. BEVs are hot and sexy, right? Elon Musk comes out there, talks about them. Everybody loves Tesla. There's a lot of launches now with the traditional OEMs all talking about their BEVs. It's one launch after the others. In Europe, Bernard, as you might know very well, BEVs have been outselling now for a couple of months diesels. So there have been a few months where there was more BEVs than diesel sold. So my question to you is, did they win? Are they taking over the market? Is that it? It's going to be BEV and that's it?
No, I don't think this is going to happen anytime soon. There are a couple of things, and I think Tim outlined them already very nicely and very precisely as well. But let's start first with something which came to my mind already several months ago. And we have a German saying, and I'm a German native speaker, so I knew the German saying, and I was looking for the English wording, and I hope it's correct. And this summarizes it, I think, very well. Is as you, Benny, said it now, where you practically indicate that the ICEs are kind of written off, and the German saying is something like those written off tend to live longer. And I think that's really important because you have all this marketing, you have all this noise about the growth of EV. And of course, you can grow a lot when you are very, very small and you grow by 100%. Then it's an impressive percentage growth rate, and still the volume is not really so much bigger. So as Tim said, I mean, you have something like 100 million or below 100 million vehicles per year produced globally. When you then have a few Teslas, I think the world can afford it, but the world will then still need definitely also the ICEs, which have a lot of flexibility, which have all the infrastructure globally. And I think the infrastructure is a really, really limiting factor for many areas in the world when it comes to pure battery electric vehicles. And so that's an important part of where you really need to look at, not only look at the headlines of Twitter now owned by Elon Musk, but look also to what's going on really in the space and who needs a car and what it is needed. And it's needed for long distances. It's needed for flexibility. It's needed in remote places. And even in the not remote places, I wonder on the bit of the midterm, when you look at beautiful Europe, where you might have the impression that every European now would love to buy an electric car, but they would love to buy it because it's so green. But where does the electricity really come from today when you charge your green electric car? It's already today only a small portion which is produced by solar and wind. If you would now switch all the cars except Norway, but in other countries to electric, how much coal and other fired electricity do you need in order to drive all this? And is this then really better than the internal combustion engine? So there's a lot of space in different areas and even in Europe, but even in more remote areas for the internal combustion engine for the next years, for sure. And next years means quite a long time, next years.
Yeah. Thank you, Bernard. Yeah, so maybe something you can elaborate on as well, and then just struck my mind. Listen, we are virtually there, but in spirit, we are now sitting in South Africa, so this will stick with the audience there. That's a country where there is not a single BEV around, or almost none, and they have load shedding, right? So I'm just thinking about massive BEV penetration in the South African market that will also have its challenges on top of improving the current situation, I would say. But so that brings me actually to a question to you. So Do you think then it's regional difference, because we're talking about the world and 100 million vehicles, but the European market is very, very different from the United States market. That are two rich, developed areas, but which is very different from the African market, Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, India, Pakistan, things like that. So do you see like also clear differences in BEV penetration or in ICE maintaining according to the geography you're in? So can you elaborate on that a little bit, maybe, Tim?
Absolutely there, and I was already referencing earlier on, what the government mandates are in these regions. So when I look to China and the penetration rates, and when I look to Europe and the penetration rates of BEV, these are significantly higher in the tune of 50% penetration over between now and in 2030. And that's different than North America, for sure. And the penetration rates, again, in North America, I think are going to be closer to 25% over this time period. And it goes back to what Bernhard said. I mean, there's a consumer behavior out there, and you, Bernhard, were describing those consumer behaviors. As an American, I can pick on the Americans as well. I mean, we like to, of course, take our vacations, drive our cars long distance. I was born and raised in Texas, and we also like big trucks, etc. So, at the end of the day, there's a consumer behavior part of this that goes into it, and this is also why the penetration rates also in regions like the United States, I think, are going to be different than in regions like Europe or regions like China, where there's very strict regulations. Not saying that's not the case, but it's also state by state here in the U.S. California is ahead of the curve versus the southern states, etc. So a little bit different nuances. And then coming to your question as well, I mean, if you look at South America, if you look at India, I mean, the infrastructure just isn't there. So the combustion engine will remain there for the foreseeable future, maybe indefinitely as well. So there's definitely nuances there, and we have to really look country by country.
So one way of looking at this, of saying, okay, we have the box of total global 100 million vehicles demand, and one way of slicing it is per country. Another way of slicing it, Bernhard, and I'm going to ask that to you, is not per country, but per vehicle segment. You have very different vehicles, right? You have very small vehicles, and you have large SUVs, etc. So do you see there a difference in BEV adaptation / ICE retainment?
Yes and no. There's no really easy answer. You cannot just say something like small cars will be all battery electric. Might be that indeed for the smaller cars it's easier because the technology is easier, so you can make them cheaper. Plus the smaller cars need perhaps less reach. And then you have the larger cars, which indeed might be then attractive more for the ICEs. What comes on top is when we slice it is the fuel cell cars. There you have another aspect where I would say small cars and fuel cell, forget about it. That would be something for a few engineers who love to have a complex setup in a small car. But for the really big ones, this fuel cell still is an alternative, not only for the trucks, but for the kind of truck-like large ones. And then they don't need to carry all this heavy battery for being heavy energized practically. I think we should not overlook that element of opportunity. And when we slice the market, and you have the small cars, you have the kind of middle-sized cars, and you have the really large ones. Well, I would, when thinking of the real big pickup trucks, you can call them half truck size cars.
So my question is, fuel cells. So how is it going? Because I know I come from the car industry, and it's the classic chicken and egg, right? If you talk to the OEMs, they say, it's fantastic, right? It's electric drive without all the hassle, without the cables and the range anxiety, etc. So it's perfect, but there's no refueling stations. And if we talk to Shell and BP and Total and Air Liquide and all the fuel station operators, they say, I'm not going to invest in expensive hydrogen refueling stations because there's no cars, right? So it's a classic chicken and egg. So who's going to break the egg? Is it going to be the trucks? Is that where it's going to start? Where will be the accelerator that will make fuel mobility reality. What do you guys think?
I think, well, if you follow Elon Musk's Twitter account on Monday, on April 1st, he tweeted out that Tesla's moving 100% to hydrogen. So, April Fool's joke. But nevertheless, I think it comes back to, Benny, and Bernhard, what you were alluding to before around looking at the class segments there. And I think there's pros and cons for fuel cells versus BEV in different segments. Let's talk about heavy-duty diesel as an example, or heavy-duty in general. In heavy-duty, look at the cost to produce a heavy-duty vehicle is significant. The weight associated with that as well is significant, and I think this is where fuel cells comes in and can provide an advantage by all means. And I think that if industry really focuses on building the infrastructure for certain class vehicles in certain regions, this would be the strategy that I would say makes sense and can gain traction and can then be realized as well. So I see fuel cells, we got to pick our poison, pick our area. And I do see opportunity in heavy duty segment. And I think the other thing that I would add, which is interesting to follow, is if you just start looking at policies, and if you look at the policies out there right now for electric vehicles, they're very, very strong. But the policies being out there right now for fuel cell electric vehicles, it's not. And I think this is something that also needs to be recognized and I think needs to gain traction also within the respective regions where policy is really pushed, subsidies are granted. And I think we also need to continue to invest in technology, in PEM electrolyzers and fuel cells, etc. So in general, again, I would tell you and say that, look, we should really look at the class of vehicle, and I think there's opportunity there, depending on that class.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Tim. That's why it's going to start probably with trucks, because there's no alternative for them, for the long haul, long distance, heavy duty ones. And they drive along freight corridors, so you don't need so many hydrogen refueling stations. And for example, South Africa, we're working on the freight corridor from Pretoria, north of Pretoria, to Durban. And similar things are happening in the UK, in the EU. So it's starting to shape up there. Bernhard, any thoughts on this?
Indeed, you asked the question: who is going to break the chicken and egg question? And my answer is very easy: governments. It's neither the car OEM nor the filling station organizers. It's the governments which break this chicken and egg question, and which in some region started. I think the European region is clearly going into that direction. I mean, the German government has been determined already quite a while, and therefore you have already within Germany you have a network which is so dense that even for a private car, it's not an issue at all to drive around any place. The problem is only when you want to go then to a neighboring country, then you find out there are only 2 filling stations then in whole France, so that's then a bit annoying. So you need the other neighboring countries to also build up something. But I think that's coming because the hydrogenization is really at least on top of the lips of the politicians, but Tim is right. The policies are not as strong in favor of it like they are for battery right now. But I'm confident that this is coming as a kind of second wave in the electrification.